Mm. My back was stiff before I even stood up. That's what 11 hours in a middle seat does to a woman my age. I pulled my carry-on from the overhead bin slowly, careful not to let the younger passengers see me wince. I had packed light, just enough for 2 weeks. I had been looking forward to those 2 weeks for 4 months. My son had called me in early October to tell me about the promotion. Regional director. The kind of title that comes with a corner office and a salary that changes how you see yourself in the mirror. I was proud of him. I am still proud of him, even now, even after everything. I want to be clear about that before I tell you the rest. His name is Michael. He is 34 years old. He has his father's jawline and my stubbornness, though he would deny the second part. He married a woman named Vanessa 3 years ago. Her family is from Connecticut. Old money, the quiet kind that doesn't announce itself but makes itself known in the way a person holds a fork or pauses before answering a question they consider beneath them. Vanessa is not a bad person. I have spent a long time trying to believe that, and most days I still do. She is simply a woman who married a man she wanted to improve, and she has been working at that project ever since. The promotion meant a new city. They moved to Scottsdale in September. A new house, new neighborhood, new chapter. Michael called me twice while they were still unpacking. He sounded happy in a way that was slightly louder than his natural happiness, the way people sound when they are performing contentment for someone they love. I noticed it, but I did not say anything. I had learned over the years of his marriage that noticing things aloud was not always welcome. He invited me to visit in November. Come see the house, Mom. Come see what we've built. I booked my flight that same evening. I should tell you something about my own life so you understand who I am when I walk into this story. I am 63 years old. I taught elementary school for 27 years in the same district in Ohio where I was born, where Michael was born, where my husband Robert passed away 11 years ago from a heart attack that gave us no warning and no time. After Robert died, I kept teaching. It was the only structure I trusted. I retired 2 years ago with a pension that is modest but reliable, a house that is paid off, and a savings account I have been careful with my entire adult life. When Michael and Vanessa were looking to buy in Scottsdale, the market was difficult. They had saved well, but not enough for the neighborhood Vanessa had her eye on. I offered to help with the down payment, $85,000. I want to say that clearly, not because I want credit for it, but because it matters to the rest of the story. I wired the money without conditions. I did not ask for a timeline. I did not ask for a contract. I did not ask to be listed on anything. Michael said thank you in a way that moved me. Vanessa sent a card with a floral border that said, "We are so grateful." I kept the card. I do not know why I am telling you that. I suppose I kept it because it felt like a promise. The taxi from the airport took 40 minutes. I watched the desert landscape flatten out around me, the mountains in the distance pale and permanent, nothing like the green roll of Ohio in November. I felt a small thrill that I recognized as the specific joy of being somewhere new when you are older, the way travel feels earned after decades of not quite having the time for it. Michael met me at the door. He looked well. He had gotten a haircut recently, the kind that costs more than a haircut should, and he was wearing a button-down shirt on a Saturday afternoon, which was new. He hugged me and the hug was real. I want to give him that. Whatever came after. The hug at the door was real. Vanessa appeared behind him. She was dressed beautifully, as she always is. She smiled and said it was lovely to have me and offered to show me to the guest room. The house was impressive. High ceilings, clean lines, a kitchen that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never actually cooked a meal in it. There were no photographs on the walls yet, just carefully chosen art in neutral tones. I noticed there was no clutter anywhere. Not a single thing that looked like it belonged to the life of a real family, rather than a catalog. The guest room was at the far end of a hallway. It had its own bathroom and a window that faced the back wall. It was perfectly comfortable and completely separate from the rest of the house. I washed my hands and came back to the kitchen where Michael was opening a bottle of wine. Vanessa had her phone out and was texting someone with focused energy. Michael poured 2 glasses and then looked at me with an expression I did not yet know how to read. He said, "Mom, I need to mention something." I said, "Of course." He set down the wine bottle. He lowered his voice, which confused me because Vanessa was standing 8 feet away and could hear him perfectly. He said, "Some of our neighbors are coming over tomorrow for brunch. And some of Vanessa's colleagues from the firm. He paused. He looked at the counter. "I just wanted to mention, they don't really know a lot about our background, and Vanessa has kind of established herself a certain way here, and it might be easier if you introduced yourself as, a family friend. Her aunt maybe, or just someone from back home." I stood there. He said, "It's not a big deal. It's just easier. You know how new neighborhoods are?" I did not know how new neighborhoods were, but I knew what he had just asked me. He had asked me to be someone other than his mother. In his house. In the house I had helped him buy. I want to tell you what I did not do because I think it matters. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not pick up my suitcase and call another taxi. I had spent a lifetime teaching 8-year-olds that the most powerful response to something that hurts you is not always the loudest one. I had believed that for a long time. I believed it then too, though I will admit the believing was harder in that kitchen than it had ever been in any classroom. I said to him, "Michael, I hear you. Let me think about that." He looked relieved in a way that made me feel sad for him. He said, "Great," and poured the wine and called to Vanessa that I was all settled in. That night I lay in the guest room and looked at the ceiling and thought about the question I had not yet asked him. I had not asked him why. I had stopped myself on purpose. I wanted to watch first. I had learned, in 63 years, that the why of something is usually visible before it is spoken, if you are patient enough to let it surface. The next morning I woke early and went to the kitchen. The house was quiet. I made coffee and stood at the large glass doors that opened onto the back patio. The yard was immaculate. There was a new gas grill still in its original placement, a patio furniture set in coordinated gray, a small succulent garden along the far wall that looked like it had been installed by a landscaper rather than planted by anyone who lived there. Vanessa came into the kitchen at 7:30. She was already dressed. She looked mildly surprised to see me standing there, as though she had briefly forgotten I was in the house. She said good morning and then moved efficiently around me to start her own version of coffee preparation, which involved a machine with several steps. I said, "The house is beautiful, Vanessa. You've made it a real home already." She said thank you without looking up. She said the neighbors are lovely. You'll enjoy meeting them. They're very accomplished people. I said I was looking forward to it. She said, "Michael mentioned you understand about the introductions." I said, "He mentioned it." She looked at me then, directly. She said, "It's just that people have certain expectations in this neighborhood, and we've worked very hard to establish ourselves here. I'm sure you understand." I said, "I understand more than you might expect." She nodded as though I had confirmed something. Then she took her coffee and went to another room. The neighbors arrived at 11. There were 4 couples. The women wore clothes that cost what my car payment used to. The men talked about golf and equity. Vanessa moved through the room like someone conducting an orchestra. She had composed herself, managing every conversation with practiced ease. I was introduced as an old family friend from Ohio. A former colleague of Michael's father, was how Vanessa put it to one couple. Michael stood nearby when she said it and looked at his shoes. I smiled. I accepted a glass of sparkling water. I spoke when spoken to. I watched my son talk about his promotion to men he had known for 6 weeks, as though those men were the audience his life had been building toward. At one point, a woman named Diane asked me how I knew the family. I said I had known Michael since he was very young. She said that was sweet. She asked if I had children of my own. I said yes. I said I had one son. She asked what he did. I said he was in regional management, very successful. She said how lovely, and turned to someone else. That was the moment I decided what I was going to do. Not in anger, in clarity. Over the following days, I watched the shape of my visit settle into something I had not anticipated. Michael and Vanessa had a full social calendar, dinners with neighbors, a gallery opening, a Sunday hike with colleagues. I was not included in most of these. The first time, Michael apologized and said it was a work thing. The second time, he said he thought I might enjoy a quiet evening and had left the name of a restaurant nearby that he thought I would like. I did not go to the restaurant. I stayed in the guest room and read and thought carefully about the specific arithmetic of what was happening. There was a granddaughter. I should have mentioned her earlier, and that is on me as the person telling this story. Lily. She is 4 years old. She had been with Vanessa's parents for the first few days while the brunch preparations were underway, and she came home on the third day of my visit. She has Michael's eyes and an energy that reminded me of him at that age, relentless and joyful, and slightly chaotic. Lily did not know anything about family friends or social positioning. She saw me in the kitchen on her first morning home and said, "Are you a grandma?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she accepted that the way children accept true things, immediately and without ceremony. She climbed onto the stool next to me and asked me to draw a horse, and I did, and it was terrible, and she laughed. Vanessa came in 10 minutes later and found us at the counter with a drawing pad and a box of markers. Something moved across her face that she controlled quickly. She said, "Lily, we talked about giving guests their space." Lily said, "But she's drawing horses." Vanessa said that was very nice and then offered to take Lily to the playroom. Lily went trailing markers, looking back at me once. I sat at the counter alone and looked at the drawing and understood what kind of visit this was going to be. On the 5th day, I asked Michael if we could take a walk. Just the two of us. He said of course and seemed relieved by the idea. We walked through the neighborhood in the late afternoon, the desert cooling slowly around us, the street lights coming on earlier than they would have in Ohio this time of year. I said, "Michael, I have one question, and I would like an honest answer." He said, "Okay." I said, "Are you ashamed of me, or are you ashamed of where you came from?" He stopped walking. He said, "Mom, that's not fair." I said, "I know it doesn't feel fair." I asked if it was accurate. He was quiet for a moment. He said, "It's not about being ashamed. It's about," he searched for the word, "it's about starting fresh. Vanessa's world is a certain way. I've worked hard to fit into that world. I just don't want things to be complicated." I said, "I understand, and I want you to know I love you, and also that I need you to know." I said this quietly, calmly, the way I used to talk to a child who had done something they knew was wrong. I need you to know that what you asked me to do the first night, that is not something I will do again. I am your mother. I will behave with grace in your home. I will be kind to your neighbors and lovely at your dinners if you invite me. But I will not introduce myself as anything other than your mother. That is the one thing I am asking." He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "I know. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." And I believed him. I also knew that sorry and changed are two different countries, and that he was standing on the border of the first one, not yet sure how to cross into the second. I stayed 3 more days. I spent most of my time with Lily, who was a genuine delight. We drew horses that improved marginally. We read 3 picture books twice each. She called me Grandma without any instruction to do so and without any objection from anyone, because Lily was 4 and operating on a different set of rules than the rest of the household. On my last evening, after Lily was in bed and Vanessa had gone upstairs with a headache that I suspected was diplomatic, Michael and I sat on the back patio with 2 cups of tea. He told me more about the job, the team he was building, the projects he was proud of. I listened with genuine interest. This is the part that I want people to understand. I was never angry at his ambition. I was never threatened by his success. I raised him to want things and go after them. I just did not know, when I was doing the raising, that he would someday file me in a category of things he had moved beyond. Before I went to bed, I set a note on the kitchen counter where I knew he would find it in the morning. I had written it 2 days earlier on a piece of paper from the notepad in the guest room. I had written it carefully and then sat with it for a long time before deciding to leave it. I left the next morning before either of them was awake. I called my own taxi. I did not want a complicated goodbye. On the flight home, somewhere over New Mexico, I opened my phone and looked at a document I had saved there 3 months earlier. It was from my attorney in Ohio, a woman I had known for 15 years and trusted completely. When I had wired the $85,000, I had also done something else, quietly and without drama, the way I have always preferred to handle the things that matter most. Because I had contributed the down payment, my attorney had advised me that I had grounds to be listed as a partial owner of the property, a silent co-owner, contingent on a formal agreement. Michael had signed that agreement. He had signed it quickly at a kitchen table back in Ohio, grateful and distracted, and I do not think he had read it the way he should have. My name was on the deed as a 22% co-owner of the Scottsdale property, not as a family friend, not as a family friend, not as a former colleague, as his mother, as myself. I had never intended to use this as leverage. That is not who I am, and I need you to believe that. I had done it on my attorney's advice as a basic financial protection, the kind of protection any sensible person would take when contributing a significant sum to a property they do not control. I had not thought about it since, but sitting on that plane, I thought about Lily calling me grandma without being asked. I thought about Michael at the door, the real hug. I thought about Vanessa saying we've worked very hard to establish ourselves here. I thought about my son looking at his shoes while his wife introduced me as a former colleague. I did not call Michael from the airport. I did not send a long message. I arrived home, watered my plants, made dinner, and called my friend Patricia and told her the whole story. She said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said I was going to wait. Waiting, when you are patient and you are right, is not passive. It looks like nothing from the outside. It looks like an old woman going home and feeding her plants and watching the November frost settle over her Ohio yard and not making any noise about what she knows and what she holds. The note I had left on the kitchen counter said this, Michael. I have always known that the most important things I ever gave you were not things at all. I gave you the belief that you were worth something. I hope you find your way back to knowing where that belief came from. I will be here when you do. All my love always, Mom. 3 weeks later, he called me. It was a Sunday morning. He said, Mom, I found the deed paperwork while I was going through the home insurance files. I didn't realize. I didn't read it. I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you had actually done for us. I said the money was always a gift, Michael. I never wanted anything back from it. He was quiet. Then he said, the note you left. I've read it a lot. I said, I know. He said, I want to do this differently. I want you to come back. I want Lily to know her grandmother. The real introduction. The right one. I said, I would like that very much. I did go back. In February, when the desert was cooler and the light was different, Vanessa met me at the door this time alone. She said, Margaret, I owe you an apology. I have thought about what I asked Michael to do to you, and I am ashamed of it. I looked at her. I had prepared for many versions of how this moment might go. I had not fully prepared for sincerity. I said, Vanessa, I accept that, and I mean it. She nodded. She stepped back and opened the door wider and said, Please come in. Your granddaughter has been drawing horses all week to show you. I picked up my bag and walked into the house. At the brunch that Sunday, there were neighbors again, some of the same ones. Vanessa introduced me to a woman named Diane, who I recognized from the first visit. She said, Diane, I'd like you to meet Michael's mother. She raised him, she's a retired teacher, and she's one of the most patient people I have ever met. Diane shook my hand and said, How wonderful. I said, It's nice to meet you properly. Lily appeared at my knee and took my hand and said, Grandma, Come see my horses. I let her pull me across the room. Behind me, I heard the party continue. Voices and laughter, the ordinary pleasant sound of people in a house. I had not needed the deed to win anything. That was never the point of it. The point of it was simply that I had known on a quiet afternoon in an Ohio attorney's office that love without any form of protection is just hope. And hope, at 63, after a lifetime of giving without keeping any record, is something you are entitled to back up with something more durable. I am back home now. Lily calls me every Sunday on a tablet, which she operates with more confidence than most adults I know. She draws me horses on the screen with her finger and holds them up. They're getting better. So are we. That is the whole story. I did not tell it because I want sympathy or because I want to make my son look bad or because I need anyone to tell me I was right. I am telling it because I think there are a lot of women my age who have stood in a kitchen and heard something that should not have been said to them, and who smiled and went to the guest room and lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling, and who quietly, without drama, decided to handle it the only way that lasts. Not with anger, not with ultimatums, with patience and clarity, and the willingness to wait as long as it takes for the people you love to find their way to the truth. My name is on that deed. My name was always going to be on something that mattered.